G'day everybody, Justin from Crossing the Ditch here. We're picking up a live podcast from Hugh Ward as he and James start making their way down Mt McKinley. This expedition proudly supported by Unwired.
G'day all, you've got Hugh Ward as your narrator tonight. James is still feeling pretty wiped out after our misadventures of the previous 48 hours, but I'm going to tell you what's been going on, so stay tuned. Friday the 12th, bit of a rest day for us. We've moved to high camp the day before, woke up feeling a bit groggy, drank lots of water, and we were starting to come good toward the afternoon. We were actually feeling very well. The weather that day had been pretty average. It had been white out for a lot of the day, poor viz, clouds moving back and forth. But just after our dinner and after our shed with Jonesy, where he gives us the weather and all that sort of stuff, about 9:30 p.m, this break came in. Beautiful weather, and as we couldn't see a cloud in the sky, they were all below us. It was fantastic. So we shot through. We got ready with our hands sort of shaking with so much excitement, and started pushing up toward Denali Pass. I think just under an hour and a half it took us to get up into the pass. And we found a little sheltered area and stashed our rope because we just passed the worst of the crevasses, and it was pretty safe after that, on one of our walking poles. And we continued up the other side of the ridge towards Archdeacon Towers. The trouble was, we were later in the day than we normally travel, and so the side of the ridge that we were on was in shadow. It doesn't really get nighttime over here, but things have only got to be out of the sun for the temperature to drop substantially, so it was quite cold. Also, it was windy. There's a lot of snow being blown around, and any exposed skin was getting quite cold almost immediately, and the summit was bathed in cloud. It didn't look like there was a lot of wind up there, but it was definitely cloudy, and visibility was going to be an issue. James's toes were incredibly cold. He described them as feeling like wood, and he just had a really bad vibe. Couldn't verbalise it, couldn't put it into words. Just wasn't happy about being there. But the long and the short of the decision was. So we descended back to our rope, and we carried the rope over into the lee of the wind, just on the other side of Denali Pass. We rode back up, and we started back down toward high camp. So we're moving down Denali Pass with a running belay clipping into existing some fixed stakes. And we were moving really slowly, much slower than we were on the way up, in fact. I was off in front, clipping the gear initially, and you can only, when you're walking in front, you can only walk as fast as the rope tension behind you will allow, which meant James was moving pretty slowly. I ran out of carabiners and set up belay and brought James to me, and was retrieving the beaners from him. And I noticed a few things. We came to the conclusion pretty quickly that James had a nasty bout of AMS. There'd been a few indicators. He was having some trouble with his mitts, getting his mitts on. And they're a bit of a pain in the neck to put on anyway, so I was having to help him, but he was getting really frustrated, which is not like James. He's normally pretty calm and collected. He was also getting, on the belay there, getting quite vague and a bit emotional, which again is not like him, and moving incredibly slowly and unsteadily on his feet. So in the end, James started descending in front with me behind and in clipping in the gear, on the basis that I may be able to arrest a fall before it became too serious. But luckily, just toward the end of the technical terrain, James really started to lose it. He could barely walk in a straight line. He was vomiting, really, really messy, and I was getting pretty bloody concerned. We finally got back into the tent. I've had to take his crampons off for him and tuck him into a sleeping bag. I went and bailed up some guides in the tent next to us and just asked them for a bit of advice. And the long and the short of it is neither of us really got any sleep. I was pumping a heap of water into James that he didn't want and was vomiting back up pretty much straight away anyway. I think the highlight of the night was where I checked to make sure his pupils were both the same size and gave him half a tablet of Diamox. But, I think it was affecting us both pretty badly, given the rescue that we'd been involved in a few days prior, that very nearly was a fatality, or a triple fatality, and given the tragic deaths of our two friends on the mess cooler that we just found out about a few hours before we started to move toward the summit. I felt things were very serious. I was really unhappy with the way things were. I've not had to deal with AMS before, and I was getting pretty stressed. I probably have only started to relax now that we're down at 11,000 feet and James is starting to come good again. If we'd have pushed on, if we'd have ignored the gut sort of instinct of James to come down, even for another half hour, I think things would be very different from what they are now. Probably we would have still got him back to the tent, but it would have been an assisted rescue at the very least. Anyway, so where we sit at the moment, we're up in our bags at 11,000 feet, and I'm starting to get cold. But I think there's no summit for us. We've done our dash there, which is pretty disappointing, really, given the amount of time and effort both of us have put into the training and getting ourselves over here, and money as well, I guess. But before we came on this trip, we sat down and we wrote four priorities for the trip. And our first priority was that both of us come home alive and well. Our second priority was that we both come home mates. And our third was that we learn as much as possible about the altitude and the cold. And the fourth was the summit. So I think it's made decision making very, very easy. We've definitely stuck to the first three. We've hopefully, I shouldn't say anything too early, we've got another few thousand feet to descend, but I think it's likely we'll both be home alive and well pretty shortly. We're definitely coming home mates. We've learned heaps about the altitude and the cold, which has been a real success as far as that's concerned. And whilst the summit would have been quite nice, really it was going to interfere with more than one of those other three things, and it just wasn't worth it. So, James sort of started coming good a bit this morning. It took us a few hours to pack up camp, which is unusual. We're generally pretty quick. And one of our friends carried James's pack partway down the technical section of ridge towards basin camp, 14,000 feet. And James took it the rest of the way once he started feeling okay. We descended the fixed lines very quickly, got into basin camp, fired up the stove. We each had a bit of a hot feed, one of the backcountry dehi jobs. And James was actually coming good enough so that he could navigate us through a horrendous bloody whiteout through Windy Corner, getting from 14,000 feet down to 11. So he's getting back to his chipper self now. He's tucked up in his sleeping bag, a bit warmer than I am, but looking pretty thoroughly shagged nonetheless. We're going to go to sleep. Hopefully the next time you hear from us, we'll be making reservations for dinner at the pub.